Sarah ran until her lungs burned and her wedding dress caught on every branch and thorn in the forest. She didn't care. Let it tear. Let it shred into 1,000 pieces. She never wanted to see the cursed thing again. Behind her, somewhere in the distance, she could still hear the hunting horns. Lord Aldrich's men, sent to retrieve his runaway bride before the scandal could spread. Before anyone learned that the timid little orphan he'd purchased from her uncle had dared to flee the altar. Purchased. That's what it had been. A transaction. Her uncle had gambling debts, and Lord Aldrich had a taste for young brides who wouldn't fight back. Sarah had seen his first 2 wives. She had attended their funerals. She would not be the third. The forest grew darker as she plunged deeper. Everyone knew these woods were forbidden. The Lycan king's territory. No human entered without permission, and those foolish enough to trespass were never seen again. Good. Let the beast take her. Let him tear her apart. It would be faster than what Aldrich had planned. Her foot caught on a root, and she went down hard. The impact drove the air from her lungs. For a moment, she simply lay there in the mud and dead leaves. Her torn dress pooled around her like a failed parachute, her veil tangled in the undergrowth. Get up, she told herself. Get up and keep running. But her body wouldn't obey. She was exhausted, starving. Aldrich had kept her locked in her chambers for 3 days before the wedding, feeding her nothing but water to ensure she looked appropriately delicate. Her feet were bleeding through her silk slippers. She had nothing left. The hunting horns sounded closer. Sarah closed her eyes. At least I tried. At least I didn't just accept it. The forest went silent. Not quiet. Silent. No birds. No insects. No wind rustling through the leaves, as if every living thing had suddenly held its breath. Sarah's eyes snapped open. He stood at the edge of the small clearing, half hidden in shadow. Massive. That was her first thought. Taller than any man she'd ever seen, with shoulders that blocked out the dying light filtering through the canopy. His hair was dark and wild, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes were molten gold, and they were fixed on her, the Lycan king. Sarah's heart stopped, then started again, hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She should run. She should scream. She should do something other than lie in the mud like a broken doll, staring up at the monster who ruled these woods. Instead, she whispered, "Please, make it quick." The king tilted his head, a strangely human gesture from something so clearly inhuman. Make what quick? His voice was deep, rough, like stones grinding together at the bottom of a river. Killing me. Sarah's voice cracked. I know I'm trespassing. I know the punishment. Just, please, don't drag it out. Something shifted in those golden eyes. Not hunger, not fury. Something she couldn't name. You're running from something. Not a question. The hunting horns sounded again. Closer now. Too close. Sarah flinched, and the king's gaze snapped toward the sound. His nostrils flared. When he looked back at her, his expression had hardened into something dangerous. Who hunts you? Lord Aldrich of the Eastern Province. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I was supposed to marry him today. I ran. He sent his men to... Her voice broke. To bring me back. Why did you run? Such a simple question, such a complicated answer. Because he killed his first 2 wives. Sarah pushed herself up onto her elbows, ignoring the pain screaming through her body. because my uncle sold me to him like livestock, because I would rather die in these woods than spend one night in that man's bed. The silence stretched between them. Sira waited for judgment, for disgust, for the killing blow. The Lycan king extended his hand. "Get up!" She stared at his hand like it might bite her. "What?" "You're injured, you're exhausted, and you're lying in mud while men who mean you harm draw closer." His voice held a note of impatience. "Get up." Sarah took his hand. His grip was warm, gentle, despite the obvious strength in those fingers. He pulled her to her feet as if she weighed nothing, steadying her when she swayed. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Good." He released her hand, but didn't step back. This close, she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. "There's a cabin 1/2 mile north. You'll stay there tonight. My men will deal with your hunters." Sarah's mind struggled to process his words. "I don't understand. Why would you help me?" "Because you asked me to make your death quick." Something flickered in his gaze, almost like pain. "Do you know how many humans have stumbled into my territory? Hundreds. They all beg. They all plead. They offer me gold, land, their firstborn children." His jaw tightened. "You're the first who simply asked for mercy in the dying." "I didn't think I deserved anything else." The words escaped before she could catch them. Honest, in a way she hadn't been in years, maybe ever. The king studied her for a long moment, then, so quietly she almost missed it. "You deserve more than a quick death, little bride." Before she could respond, shouts erupted from the trees. Aldrich's men had found them. 6 soldiers burst into the clearing, swords drawn, torches blazing. They skidded to a halt when they saw the king, their faces draining of colour. "The girl," one of them stammered. She belongs to Lord Aldrich. We're here to retrieve her." The Lycan king didn't move, didn't raise his voice, simply stood there, a wall of shadow and power between Sarah and the men who had come to drag her back to her nightmare. "She belongs to no one." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "Especially not to a man who purchases brides and buries them within the year." The soldier's sword trembled. "You have no right." "I have every right. She's on my land, under my protection." The king smiled, and there was nothing human in it. "You have exactly 10 seconds to leave my forest. After that I start removing limbs. Lord Aldrich will hear of this. He'll—" 5 seconds. The soldiers ran. Sarah watched them crash through the undergrowth, their torches disappearing into the darkness. Her legs gave out, and she would have fallen if the king hadn't caught her. "Easy." He lowered her gently, supporting her weight as if it were nothing. "You're safe now." "Why?" The question tore from her throat. "You don't know me. I'm nobody. I'm just—" "You're a woman who chose death over captivity." He looked down at her, and for the first time his expression softened. "That's not nobody. That's someone worth protecting." Sarah stared up at the Lycan king, this monster from the stories, this beast who was supposed to tear her apart, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not fear, hope. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now I take you somewhere warm and safe, and you rest." He lifted her into his arms as easily as one might lift a child, cradling her against his chest. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out what comes next." "And if Aldrich comes for me?" The king's arms tightened around her. His eyes flashed gold in the darkness. "Then Aldrich dies." Sarah should have been frightened by the casual promise of violence, by the ancient power radiating from the creature who held her, by the impossibility of everything that was happening. Instead, for the first time in years, she felt safe. She let her head fall against his shoulder and let the monster carry her home. Sarah woke to warmth and the smell of wood smoke. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed beneath her was soft, softer than anything she'd slept on in years. Furs covered her body, heavy and luxurious. Sunlight streamed through a window, painting golden stripes across rough-hewn walls. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, the running, the forest, the king. She sat up too fast, and her head spun. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. Her feet, she looked down and found them wrapped in clean bandages. Someone had tended her wounds while she slept. "You're awake?" Sarah's heart lurched. He was sitting in a chair by the fire, watching her. In the daylight, he was somehow more intimidating and less monstrous at the same time. His features were harsh but handsome. His golden eyes held none of the bloodlust the stories had promised. He looked tired, like a man carrying a weight no one else could see. "How long was I asleep?" Her voice came out hoarse. 14 hours. He rose from the chair, and she tensed instinctively. He noticed, stopped. "I'm not going to hurt you." "I know." The words surprised her as much as him. "I don't know why I know, but I do." Something shifted in his expression. He moved to a small table near the window and returned with a tray, bread, cheese, dried fruit, a steaming cup of something that smelled like herbs. "You need to eat. Slowly. Your body has been starved." He set the tray on the bed beside her, then retreated to a respectful distance, giving her space. Sarah's throat tightened unexpectedly. When had anyone last cared whether she ate? She picked up the bread with trembling fingers and took a small bite. It was still warm, fresh baked. She had to stop herself from shoving the entire thing into her mouth. "Thank you," she managed between bites. "For the food, for last night, for everything." "You don't need to thank me for basic decency. In my experience, basic decency is rare." She took a sip of the herbal tea. It was bitter but soothing, especially toward people like me. "People like you?" "Orphans, burdens, women who exist only as currency to be traded between men." She said it without bitterness, simply fact, the way things had always been. The king's jaw tightened. "Is that what you believe you are? Currency?" "It's what I've been told my whole life." Sarah set down the cup, meeting his gaze. "My parents died when I was 7. My uncle took me in, but only because he hoped to marry me off for profit. When Lord Aldrich offered enough gold to clear his debts, my uncle didn't hesitate." She laughed, and it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "I was worth exactly 3,000 gold pieces. He got a bargain, really. Aldrich paid twice that for his second wife." The fire crackled in the silence that followed. "What was your name before you became currency?" The question startled her. "What?" "Your name." He leaned forward slightly. "I've been calling you Little Bride in my head, but I suspect you have an actual name." "Sarah." She hadn't said it out loud in weeks. Aldrich had insisted on calling her pet. "My name is Sarah." "Sarah." He repeated it like he was tasting the syllables. "I'm Kyle." She blinked. "Just Kale? Not His Royal Majesty the Lycan King?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Just Kale." Though I admit it's been a long time since anyone used it. How long? 273 years. Sarah choked on her tea. That's old. Yes. This time he did smile, just barely. Does that frighten you? She considered the question seriously. No. Should it? Most humans find my age unsettling. Most humans haven't been sold to a murderer by their own family. Sarah wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Age seems like a minor concern in comparison. Kyle studied her with those golden eyes. Sarah felt exposed under his gaze, like he could see straight through her skin to the broken parts underneath. But strangely, she didn't mind. There was no judgment in his expression, only curiosity, and something that might have been recognition. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "Neither are you." She pulled the furs tighter around herself. "The stories say you eat children and bathe in the blood of virgins." "I'm a vegetarian, actually, and I prefer regular baths." Sarah stared at him. Then, despite everything, despite the terror of the past weeks, despite her aching body and uncertain future, she laughed. It burst out of her like water from a broken dam. Real laughter. The kind she hadn't experienced in years. She laughed until tears streamed down her face, until her ribs ached, until she wasn't sure if she was laughing or crying anymore. Kaisel waited. He didn't try to stop her or comfort her or tell her she was being hysterical. He simply waited until the storm passed. "I'm sorry," she gasped when she could speak again. "I don't know why." "You've been holding yourself together through terror and exhaustion and starvation. Your body needed release." His voice was matter-of-fact, kind. "Don't apologize for being human." Sarah wiped her eyes. "What happens now? I can't stay here forever. And Aldrich won't just give up. He paid for me. In his mind, I'm his property." "You're not property. You're a person." Cale's voice hardened on the words. "And you can stay here as long as you need. Aldrich has no power in my territory." "But he has power everywhere else. He has allies, soldiers, political connections." She shook her head. "Eventually, he'll find a way to force the issue. And I won't let you start a war over me. I'm not worth—" "Don't." The single word stopped her cold. "Don't tell me what you're worth." Kyle rose from his chair, and for the first time, Sarah saw anger in his face. Not directed at her, directed at something beyond her, at the world that had convinced her she was worthless. "You've been told your whole life that you're nothing, that you exist only to be used and discarded. But that's not truth. That's just the lies of small, cruel men who couldn't recognize treasure if it landed in their laps." Sarah's breath caught. "You ran." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "When most people would have submitted, would have accepted their fate, you ran. Into a forbidden forest. Towards certain death. Because you refused to let someone else decide your ending." He stopped at the edge of her bed, looking down at her with something like wonder. "That's not worthless, Sarah. That's extraordinary." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like this, like she mattered, like her choices meant something. "I don't know how to be extraordinary," she whispered. "I only know how to survive." "Then survive here." Cale extended his hand, just as he had in the forest. An offer, a choice. "Stay, heal, and when you're ready, we'll figure out the rest together." Sarah looked at his hand. This ancient king who should have killed her, who had every right to throw her back to the wolves, the human ones anyway. Instead, he was offering her sanctuary, safety. Time. She took his hand. Together? She agreed. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been frozen for a very long time beginning to thaw. She wasn't safe. Not really. Aldrich was still out there. Her uncle would be furious. The whole world seemed determined to drag her back into the cage she'd escaped. But for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. A week passed. Then two. Sarah healed slowly, her feet mended, the bruises faded. The hollow look in her eyes began to fill with something other than fear. Cale gave her space. He brought her meals, but didn't linger. He checked on her wounds, but kept his touch clinical, professional. He answered her questions about his kingdom, his people, his impossibly long life. But he never pushed her to share more than she wanted. It was the strangest courtship Sarah had never asked for. Because that's what it was, she realized. A courtship. He was wooing her with patience and respect, and the simple gift of letting her exist without demands. She wasn't sure what to do with that. On the 15th night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The cabin felt too small, the walls pressing in. She wrapped a fur around her shoulders and slipped outside. The forest was different at night. Silver moonlight turned the trees into cathedral pillars. Mist curled along the ground like something alive. It should have been frightening. Instead, it felt like freedom. She found Kyle by the river. He sat on a fallen log, staring at the water. His profile was sharp against the moonlight. That strong jaw, those impossible shoulders, the way his hair fell across his forehead like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked lonely, ancient and powerful, and desperately, achingly lonely. You should be resting. He didn't turn around. So should you. Sarah settled onto the log beside him, leaving a careful distance between them. Do Lycan kings not require sleep? We require less than humans, but that's not why I'm awake. Why then? He was quiet for a long moment. The river murmured its secrets to the stones. I'm trying to figure out what to do about you. Sarah's heart stuttered. Do about me? You can't stay in that cabin forever, and I can't... He stopped, started again. There are things I haven't told you, things that complicate this situation. What things? Kyle finally turned to look at her. In the moonlight, his golden eyes seemed to glow from within. When I found you in the forest, I told you that your scent drew me, that I heard you running and came to investigate. He shook his head slowly. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Sarah waited, barely breathing. Your scent didn't just draw me, Sarah. It called to me, the way a mate's scent calls to their bonded. His voice dropped. You're human. This shouldn't be possible. But from the moment I caught your scent on the wind, my wolf has been convinced that you belong to me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Mate? Sarah repeated carefully, as in the person my soul recognizes as its other half, as in the one being in all the world meant to stand beside me. His laugh was bitter. I've lived nearly 3 centuries. I had given up on finding a mate, convinced myself I was meant to rule alone. And then you crashed into my forest in a torn wedding dress, asking me to kill you quickly, and my entire world shifted on its axis. Sarah's mind raced. She thought of the pull she'd felt toward him from the first moment, the way his presence made her feel safe in a way nothing else ever had, the strange certainty that had settled in her bones when she looked into his eyes. Is that why you've been so careful with me? She asked. Keeping your distance. Never touching me more than necessary. Yes, the word was rough. The mate bond creates urges, the need to claim, to protect, to possess. His hands clenched on his knees. I refuse to be another man who takes your choices away. I refuse to let you feel trapped by something you never asked for. Kale! You've spent your entire life being told what to do, who to marry, what you're worth. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. I won't add to that. If you want to leave, when you're healed, when you're strong, I'll give you gold and safe passage to anywhere in the world. You'll never have to see me again. And if I don't want to leave? The question escaped before she could stop it. Kale went very still. Then you would need to understand what staying means. The mate bond isn't a human marriage. It's permanent, unbreakable. Once completed, we would be bound together for the rest of our lives, and as my mate, you would share my lifespan. Centuries, Sarah breathed. Centuries. She should be terrified. She should run, again, from another man trying to claim her. But Kyle wasn't claiming, he was offering, and asking nothing in return except her honest choice. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you look at me, what do you see? Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. I see a woman who was broken by the world and refused to stay broken. I see courage that puts warriors to shame. I see someone who deserves kindness and safety and joy, and has received none of those things. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek. I see the other half of my soul, and I see someone I could love for the rest of eternity, if she'd let me. Sarah's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. I don't know how to let someone love me, she admitted. I don't know if I'm capable of it. Everything good in my life has been taken away. Everyone who should have protected me has hurt me instead. I know. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. And I'm not asking for your love. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm asking for the chance to prove that not everyone will hurt you. That some people keep their promises. What promises? That you're safe. That no one takes you now. His eyes held hers, golden and burning and impossibly sincere. That I will spend however long you give me showing you what you're worth. Sarah leaned into his touch. It was such a small movement, such a monumental surrender. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I don't want to be someone's possession again. You won't be. The mate bond isn't ownership, Sarah. It's partnership. It's choosing each other every day for as long as we live. And you would choose me? A broken human with nothing to offer? Kyle's expression shattered and reformed into something fierce. You offer everything. He cupped her face in both hands, his touch achingly gentle. Your strength, your resilience, your laugh that sounds like freedom, the way you look at me like I'm a man instead of a monster. His forehead dropped to hers. You offer everything, Sarah, and I would spend centuries proving it to you. She kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated. She simply closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his, pouring every ounce of hope and fear and desperate wanting into the contact. Kale made a sound low in his throat, half growl, half groan, and kissed her back. His hands tangled in her hair. His body curved around hers like he was trying to shield her from the entire world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah laughed. I think, she said shakily, I'd like to stay. Kyle's smile was like sunrise after an endless night. Then stay. 3 days of happiness. That's all she got before the world came crashing back. Sarah was in the garden behind Kyle's main hall, not the cabin anymore, but his true home, a sprawling stone fortress hidden deep in the forest. She was learning the names of the flowers from an elderly Lycan woman named Mira, who had appointed herself Sarah's unofficial guardian. Moon petals, Mira said, pointing to a cluster of silver blooms. They only open at... The warning horns shattered the peaceful morning. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She knew that sound, had heard it in her nightmares every night since escaping. Hunting horns. Kale appeared at her side so fast she didn't see him move. His face was granite, his eyes blazing gold. Get inside. Kale, what? Aldrich is at the border. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the fury beneath it. He's brought an army, and he's demanding your return. The world tilted. Sarah gripped Kale's arm to steady herself. An army? He brought an army for me? It's not about you. Not really. Kale's jaw tightened. It's about power, about proving that no one, not even the Lycan king, can take what belongs to him. He turned to face her fully. He's calling it a diplomatic mission, demanding I hand over his stolen bride or face consequences. What consequences? War. The word landed like a stone in still water. No. Sarah shook her head. No, I won't let you. People will die, Kyle. Your people. For me. My people would gladly die to protect their future queen. We haven't even completed the bond yet. I'm nobody. You're everything. He gripped her shoulders, his touch firm, but gentle. And I will not let that man touch you. Not if I have to tear through 1,000 soldiers to stop him. There has to be another way. There isn't. Aldrich has made his intentions clear. He'll accept nothing less than your return. Kale's eyes searched hers. Unless what? He hesitated. In all the time she'd known him, she'd never seen him hesitate. Unless you complete the bond with me. Here. Now. His voice was rough. Once we're mated, you become untouchable by human law. You'd be my queen. No lord, no matter how powerful, could legally claim you. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. You said you wouldn't pressure me. You said you'd give me time. I know. Pain flickered across his face. And if you say no, I'll respect that. I'll fight Aldrich's army. I'll win. I have no doubt of that. But people will die. Good people. And Aldrich will keep coming, again and again, until one of us is destroyed. But if we bond, then it's over. Legally, permanently. You'd be mine, and he'd have no claim. Kyle released her shoulders, stepping back. But I won't do it unless you want it. Unless you choose it freely. I meant what I said, Sarah. I won't be another man who takes your choices away. Sarah stood in the garden, surrounded by flowers she'd just learned the names of, and faced the impossible. She thought of Aldrich, his cold eyes, his cruel smile, the bodies of his first 2 wives. She thought of Kyle, his patience, his gentleness, the way he looked at her like she was precious. She thought of the life she'd been running from, and the life that waited if she was brave enough to claim it. If I do this, she said slowly, it can't be because I'm scared. It can't be because it's the strategic choice. She stepped toward him, closing the distance he'd created. If I bond with you, it's because I want you, because in 3 weeks You've shown me more kindness than I've received in my entire life. Because when I'm with you, I feel like I matter. Sarah, I'm not finished. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. If I do this, I need to know it's real. That you're not just saving me because your wolf recognizes me as mate, that there's something more. Kyle covered her hand with his own. The mate bond tells me you're mine, he said quietly. But my heart tells me I love you. Those are two different things, Sarah. The bond didn't make me fall in love with your courage, your laughter, the way you refused to let the world break you. I did that all on my own. You love me? I love you. He said it like a vow. Not because the bond compels me to, because you're the most extraordinary person I've ever met, and I want to spend the rest of my very long life proving that you're worthy of love. Sarah rose on her toes and kissed him. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. Then let's do it. Let's bond. Kyle searched her face. You're certain? I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm also certain. For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I want. She cupped his face in her hands. I want you, Kyle. I choose you. Not because I'm running from something, but because I'm running toward something. Toward a life I never dared to imagine. He kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, like she was salvation and redemption and hope wrapped in human form. The bonding requires a ceremony, he murmured against her lips, witnessed by my people, sealed in blood and moonlight. How long? It can be done within the hour. Then we don't have time to waste. Kyle swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the great hall where his people had already gathered. Word travelled fast among Lycans. As they crossed the threshold, a messenger burst through the doors. Your Majesty, Lord Aldrich is demanding an audience. He's at the gates with a white flag, claiming the right of parley. Cale's arms tightened around Sarah. She felt his whole body vibrate with barely contained rage. He wants to negotiate, the messenger continued. He says he'll withdraw his army if you return the girl. Sarah looked up at Kyle. His golden eyes met hers, asking a silent question. Let him in, she said. Sarah, let him in. She lifted her chin. I want him to see. I want him to watch me choose someone else. I want him to understand that I was never his to own. A slow, fierce smile spread across Kyle's face. As my queen commands. He set her down gently, keeping one hand at the small of her back. Together, they turned to face the doors. Open the gates, Cale called. Let Lord Aldrich witness what happens when you try to cage a woman who was born to fly. Sarah stood at his side, her heart pounding, her spine straight. She had spent her whole life being traded, sold, owned. Today, she would finally belong to herself, and give herself freely to the man she loved. The great doors swung open. Lord Aldrich strode in like he owned the place. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, silver hair, cold blue eyes, a smile that never reached beyond his lips. He wore his finest armor, polished to a mirror shine, as if he'd come to collect a prize rather than beg for scraps. His gaze found Sarah immediately. Something flickered in those ice-blue depths. Surprise, perhaps, at seeing her standing proud instead of cowering. Then his expression smoothed into familiar condescension. My dear pet. His voice was silk over steel. You've led me on quite the chase. But playtime is over now. Come along. Sarah didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't look away. No. The word echoed through the silent hall. Aldrich's smile faltered. "I beg your pardon?" I said no. Sarah stepped forward, feeling Cale's warmth at her back, his strength bolstering her own. "I'm not your pet. I'm not your property. And I'm not going anywhere with you." "You don't have a choice." Aldrich's mask slipped, revealing the cruelty beneath. "I paid for you. You belong to me." "She belongs to no one," Kyle growled, "except herself." "And I choose," Sarah said, her voice ringing clear, "to give myself to him." She turned to Cale, took his hand, and faced the crowd of Lycans who had gathered to witness history. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's complete the bond." Aldrich's face twisted with fury. "You can't. I won't allow this." Kyle smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You don't have a choice." The bonding ceremony was ancient and beautiful. Kyle's people formed a circle around them, their eyes glowing gold in the torchlight. An elder stepped forward. A woman so old her hair had turned pure white, her face a map of centuries. "Who stands before the moon tonight?" she intoned. "Cale, son of Aaron, king of the Western Territories." His voice carried through the hall. "I come to claim my mate." "And who accepts this claim?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Sarah, daughter of no one, belonging to no one." She glanced at Aldrich, who stood frozen with impotent fury, held in place by Lycan guards. "Until now." The elder nodded. "Then let the bond be witnessed." Cale produced a small silver blade. Sarah had been warned about this part, the blood exchange that would seal them together permanently. She held out her palm without hesitation. He made a shallow cut across her palm, then his own. When their hands clasped together, blood mingling, Sarah felt it. The bond. It crashed into her like a wave, like lightning, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. She felt Cale's presence wrap around her soul, his strength, his devotion, his fierce and endless love. And she knew he could feel her too. All of her. Every broken piece and every hard-won victory. "By blood and moonlight," the elder declared, "by choice and covenant, I pronounce this bond complete. What the fates have joined, let no mortal tear asunder." The hall erupted in howls of celebration. Kyle pulled Sarah into his arms and kissed her, deep and claiming and utterly unrestrained. When they broke apart, his eyes were liquid gold, and his smile was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "My mate," he murmured. "My queen." "My king," she whispered back. "My choice." "This is an outrage!" Aldrich's voice cut through the celebration like a blade. He struggled against the guards, his face purple with rage. "She was mine, legally purchased. I demand—" "You demand nothing." Cale released Sarah and stalked toward Aldrich with predatory grace. "You come to my territory, threaten my people, and try to claim my mate. Do you know the penalty for such offences?" Aldrich paled. "The other lords will hear of this. There will be consequences." "There will be." Cale stopped inches from Aldrich's face. "But not for me." He turned to address the hall, his voice carrying to every corner. "Let it be known throughout the realm that Lord Aldrich of the Eastern Province has committed crimes against my crown. He purchased a woman against her will. He starved her, imprisoned her, planned to make her his third dead wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "These charges will be brought before the High Council. His lands will be seized, his titles stripped, and his army—" Cale smiled, all teeth. will be escorted from my territory with the understanding that if they ever return, they will not leave alive." "You can't do this," Aldrich sputtered. "I'm a lord. I have rights." "You had rights." Sierra stepped forward, standing at Cale's side. "When you bought me, you thought you were buying silence, compliance, a victim too broken to fight back." She lifted her chin. "You were wrong." She leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hall. "I hope you remember this moment for the rest of your miserable life. The moment you watched everything you valued slip through your fingers. The moment the girl you called pet became a queen." She straightened. "Now get out of my castle." The guards dragged Aldrich away. His screams of protest echoed through the corridors long after the doors slammed shut. Sierra stood in the silence that followed, trembling with adrenaline and triumph and overwhelming emotion. Then Cale's arms wrapped around her from behind, and she melted into his warmth. "That," he murmured against her hair, "was magnificent. I've been wanting to say that for a very long time." I could feel it through the bond. He turned her in his arms, cupping her face. "I could feel everything. Your fear, your courage, your love." "You can feel my love? It's the brightest thing I've ever known." His thumbs traced her cheekbones. "Like carrying a piece of the sun inside my chest." Sierra laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. I should have said it before the ceremony. I love you, Cale." "I love you too." He kissed her forehead, her nose, the tears on her cheeks. "I will love you for the rest of eternity. And the eternity after that." 1 year later, Sierra stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the sunrise paint the forest in gold and pink. So much had changed. Aldrich had been stripped of everything: his lands, his titles, his power. The High Council had been merciless when they'd learned the truth about his dead wives. He spent his days now in a prison cell, forgotten and alone. Her uncle had tried to claim compensation for his lost investment. Kyle had responded by sending him a detailed list of the debts he would face if he ever attempted to contact Sierra again. He hadn't. The Lycan kingdom had welcomed their new queen with open arms. Sarah had expected suspicion, resentment, hostility. Instead, she'd found family. Mira had become her closest confidant. The guards treated her with fierce protectiveness. Even the children of the castle followed her around like she was something magical, because to them, she was. The human woman who had won their king's heart. The runaway bride who had become a queen. Arms wrapped around her from behind. Kyle pressed a kiss to her shoulder, his warmth seeping into her bones. "You're thinking too loudly again." "I'm thinking about how lucky I am." She leaned back into his chest. "A year ago, I was running through these woods in a torn wedding dress, praying for a quick death. And now I'm praying for a long life." She turned in his arms, smiling up at him. "A very, very long life. With you." Kyle's answering smile made her heart soar. "That can be arranged." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, the bond between them humming with shared joy. "I believe I promised you centuries." "You did." "I intend to make every single one of them count." Sarah pulled him closer, deepening the kiss, pouring all her love and gratitude and fierce, unexpected happiness into the contact. She had been sold, starved, hunted, broken, and she had survived. She had run into a forbidden forest expecting death, and found a life beyond her wildest dreams. A king who loved her, a people who accepted her, a future that stretched out endlessly, full of possibility and hope. The runaway bride who became a queen. The woman who learned she was worth fighting for. The girl who finally found home. If you loved Sarah and Cale's story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite part. I read every single one. Until next time, stay wild